The death took just 12 minutes, far shorter than that of Devontae Williams.
On the 26th of July, 2004, Marcella Williams, the lover of Lisa Coleman, found her 9-year-old son Devontae unconscious and called 911. While en route to her apartment, firefighters and paramedic Troy Brooks stated that the dispatcher changed the call from breathing to full arrest. When he arrived, Devontae was lying on the bathroom floor, clad in a disposable diaper. Brooks testified that Devontae appeared emaciated and looked as if he was only 3 to 5 years old. He was in fact aged 9. Brooks immediately realized that Devontae was dead. His body was already in full rigor mortis, which usually occurs several hours after death. This shocked Brooks because Marcella had told him that Devontae had just eaten and thrown up, and that Marcella and Lisa had been washing him. Brooks also noticed that Devontae had a few dirty bandages on his arms. Devontae himself began first grade in 2002. Marcella pulled him out of school in mid-November before the holidays. Before that, Devontae's teacher, Jean-Anne Stokes, noticed that Devontae had a difficult time adapting to the classroom. He did not take non-verbal cues from Stokes or his classmates. Stokes and the cafeteria staff noticed that Devontae was always hungry. The cafeteria staff would usually find extra food to give him, and in this true crime story, the child was always hungry. That's just disgusting. How heartbreaking is that? Stokes also noticed that Devontae had some markings on his body that concerned her. She and the school's counselor reported all of this to the CPS, the Child Protective Services. Devontae spoke to a man from CPS on the phone, but Stokes could not hear what he asked Devontae. In November, Stokes developed a plan for Devontae to take part in an alternative program so he could learn how school works. Before the plan could be implemented, Devontae disappeared from school and never returned. Lisa told CPS investigators that Marcella did not want Devontae to go to school or to a doctor because she was afraid that Devontae would report the abuse and someone would call CPS. Lisa did not defy Marcella, and the record indicates that the two acted in concert. Devontae's sister, Destiny, testified that Devontae was tied up in the bathroom. Also, according to Lisa's own statement, Devontae had been restrained inside the home since June 2004. Who on earth restrains a child? Malnutrition was one of the causes of this death, according to the state's experts, and it occurs over an extended period of time. Regarding the day of the murder, Vanessa Sheriff, a paramedic, testified that Marcella told her that she tried to feed Devontae Pediasure. Marcella also said that Devontae was breathing when she called 911. Vanessa Sheriff believed this statement did not match with what she saw on the bathroom floor. Both Brooks and Sheriff noticed that Devontae had traces of yellow vomit or bile around his mouth and nose. Sheriff believed that the appearance of vomit was consistent with the liquid Pediasure. Now, Dr. Daniel Kozelman conducted the autopsy. He determined that Devontae's death was a homicide and that the direct cause of death was malnutrition coupled with slight pneumonia. And you know what really pisses me off? I mean, of course, all these murders are horrific, but malnutrition, that's a slow, prolonged time of abuse. Sickening. In fact, Devontae weighed less than 40 pounds at the time of his death. My son is 3 years old. I think he weighs like maybe 38 pounds. Devontae was 9 and he weighed the same. Wow. Dr. Konzelman determined that Devontae was malnourished because he lacked subcutaneous fat cells. He also cited the lack of fat cells surrounding Devontae's heart as very unusual. He also explained how the external injuries to Devontae's body contributed to his death. He said malnutrition will depress the immune system. There are cells in the body that are designed to recognize invaders and deal with them, and that takes energy. As someone becomes more malnourished, their system is less able to protect themselves. The doctor noted evidence indicating that Devontae had been continuously bound. Devontae had numerous linear marks on her wrists. Some of the marks were scarred, indicated wounds that had healed, and some that were giant sores, indicating that they were not healed. This demonstrated a pattern of restraint. Devontae's ankles had similar markings. Devontae's ear had a significant wound that was beginning to heal. His lower lip had an ulceration and a tear that would make it hard for Devontae to eat and drink. It appeared that Devontae had chicken noodle soup before he died, but according to Dr. Konzelman, it was inadequate, too late, and possibly too much. Got a question for you all. What is meant by restraining a child? I've never used that, and all the parents that I know, I've never heard them use that word either. Who restrains a child? You discipline a child, you tell a child to calm down. You know, kids do crazy stuff, right? You just tell them, okay, don't do it. But you don't think, okay, I'm going to restrain him. You see what I'm saying? Dr. Nancy Kellogg, a board certified pediatrician and specialist in child abuse, identified at least 250 distinct injuries to Devontae, including cigarette or cigar burn wounds and numerous ligature marks on his arms and legs. Kellogg described the starvation of a child as very rare and unusual. However, based on the ligature marks, she concluded that Devontae was intentionally starved to death. Devontae had been restrained from accessing food, and based on a review of Devontae's medical records, Dr. Kellogg said that Devontae had a normal growth velocity for a child his age, which means that he needed to eat adequately. And this also indicated that he did not suffer from a disease that would stunt his growth. In the months before his death, however, Devontae's weight spiked downward and he stopped growing. The physical stress caused Devontae's hair growth to be abnormal. He had hair growing in places where hair does not normally grow. Such growth is typically seen in people who are anorexic. Detective Jim Ford questioned Lisa while investigating Devontae's death. Lisa told him that she lived with Marcella about half of the time and with her son and mother the other half. She used to strike Devontae with a belt but stopped in February of March of 2004 because it left welts. She stated that she and Marcella tied up Devontae on several occasions. Recalling the night that Devontae died, Lisa stated that Marcella woke up screaming. She attempted to administer CPR, and Lisa said that she put Devontae in a warm bath to revive him. Lisa did not know how Devontae injured his arms and legs. Devontae's sister, Destiny, who was 8 at the time, testified that Lisa would tie Devontae up with the extension cord in the bathroom. Extension cord in the bathroom. Would that be like a plug? Those wires are thicker. That must have hurt a lot. When Devontae was tied up, he couldn't move around much and did nothing. In fact, the CPS investigators, Jennifer Diebel and Edna Campbell, they testified that Devontae was removed from Marcella's home and he was placed in foster care in 1999 because Lisa physically abused him. However, Devontae was returned to Marcella's custody about a year later. After her arrest in this case, Lisa told the two CPS investigators that she bruised Devontae by striking him with a belt in 2004. She spoke to her mother about the incident and her mother told her not to touch Devontae. She admitted that she tied up Devontae on 2 occasions with clothing to keep him from hurting himself or others. According to the investigators from the CPS, Lisa said that Marcella did not want to take Devontae to the doctor because she was afraid that the bruises and marks would prompt a doctor to call CPS. Lisa admitted that she had struck and pushed Devontae, causing him to split his lip. She also told the investigators that Marcella did not want Devontae to go to school because Lisa was afraid that he would report the abuse and the school would call the CPS. Lisa stated that Devontae had been tied up regularly since June and that the sore on his arm was caused by him fighting to be released. Look at this boy's face. Such a sweet face. I have 2 kids myself. I could never imagine ever doing this. How could you ever treat a child like this? Tying him up? He's fighting to be released? What the fuck? In the house, the pantry door had a lock on top of the door frame, and investigators discovered a dry urine stain on the floor. But Lisa denied locking Devontae in the pantry. Lisa also said that Devontae had been sick for about a month before his death. He did not eat very much when fed, and he would throw up. Lisa stated that in the attempt to help Devontae, she and Marcella gave him a variety of over-the-counter medicines. Now, Dr. Winkler, a pathologist, testified for the defense. He stated that Devontae died from aspiration pneumonia, which is the result of sucking food or particles of material which didn't go to the stomach properly through the esophagus and sucked instead through the trachea, which leads to the lungs. And when I read that, I thought to myself, what a lot of bollocks. Winkler noted aspirated material in Devontae's lung and that his right lung was twice the size of his left because of the aspirating material. He disagreed with Conzelman's determination that the absence of fat around Devontae's heart was significant. In his opinion, children rarely have fat around the heart. As for malnutrition, Winkler agreed that Devontae was malnourished. There was no evidence that Devontae was unable to metabolize food. We then move on to Dr. Nizam Pewani, the chief medical examiner with Tarrant County. He also examined Devontae's body during the autopsy. The state called him to testify to rebut Winkler's testimony. He stated that a normal person does not aspirate and die, and that there was no reason to suggest that Devontae aspirated given his medical history. Viewing the entire picture, Perwani stated even if he had aspirated, the pneumonia is not a very significant component in this child's death. Perhaps the most dramatic component is malnourishment. He died because of malnourishment. Finally, Lisa told the CPS investigators that anyone who inquired into Devontae's whereabouts was informed that he was with his mother's people, when in reality, for the most part, Devontae was at home. Lisa's statement was supported by testimony from Marcella's sister. Her sister testified that Lisa and Marcella came to her house with Marcella's daughters, and when she asked where Devontae was, both Lisa and Marcella told her that he was with another family member. Now, some of the history regarding these individuals. CPS records show that Lisa was involved with Marcella's family as early as 1995. In 1999, Lisa herself was the subject of an abuse case involving Devontae. Devontae at the time was removed from the home because he was being abused by Lisa and his mother failed to protect him from the abuse. He was returned to the family home only when Marcella agreed to not let Lisa live in the house, and the CPS caseworkers were certain that Lisa was not living in the home. But their records indicated that at the time of Devontae's death, Lisa lived in the home more than 50% of the time and was considered by CPS as a caregiver. And you gotta ask yourself, right? If Devontae is being abused by Lisa so much that the authorities removed him, right? Why is Marcella allowing Lisa to live there anyway? Forget 50% of the time, why is she there 1% of the time? You see what I mean? How can a mother allow this to happen to her child? Lisa admitted to the CPS investigators that she had pushed and struck Devontae, causing him to fall and split his lip. But she insisted she did not do this since February 2004. In other words, yeah, I abused him, but it's been a few months now. Muppet. Lisa's own mother had told Lisa to leave Devontae alone, and her sister had advised her to get help for Devontae. Lisa also admitted to tying up Devontae with clothing at least twice, but insisted that it was for his own protection because he wandered at night. Devontae's sister told the jury that Lisa kept Devontae tied up in the bathroom and whipped him with extension cords. She also told the jury that Lisa struck her and her sister with belts, clothes hangers, and extension cords. Conzelman himself testified about a significant injury to Devontae's lip that would have, before it healed, made it difficult for him to eat and nearly impossible to drink. I want you to think about that for a second. I've had accidental cuts on my lips. I've even had ulcers on my tongue or under the lip. I'm sure you have. But imagine you had a wound on your lips so bad that it was difficult or nearly impossible for you to eat. What could that have been? That must have been a really forceful impact. You see what I'm saying? Devontae also had a deformity to one of his ears that was caused by long-term traumatic injury. A ligature scarring on his caused by attempts to prevent Devontae from wetting his bed. Wow, I have never heard that before. Let me tell you that again. He's a child, he wet the bed, it's okay. So to prevent him from wetting the bed, she his wow. And as mentioned previously, there was ample evidence of intentional starvation. Devontae himself had been healthy and growing in 1999. His starvation was not based on metabolic factors. The presence of depleted fat cells showed that he had received adequate nutrition at some time. Kellogg himself said that there was no food matter in Devontae's system beyond his stomach, indicating that he had not eaten regularly. The jury also heard from Carol Bowdry, Lisa's own expert, that Devontae's injuries were torturous. Bowdry agreed on cross-examination that Lisa systematically and chronically abused Devontae. She testified that Devontae went through agony. She also testified that abusers such as Lisa may intend for the child to go through an awful lot of pain and suffering, but are surprised when a child dies from the abuse. Lisa's second expert, Dr. Mary Connell, testified on cross-examination that even someone like Lisa, who suffered abuse as a child, would know that systematic abuse of Devontae was wrong. The state went through all of Lisa's life, and they presented evidence of felony convictions for burglary, of a possession of a controlled substance. In fact, the defense expert, Dr. Paula, admitted that Lisa was previously charged for carrying an unlawful weapon in 1993, and she was arrested. Now, many of you might be thinking, okay, this is what Lisa did. Well, what about Marcella? What happened to her? Well, I'm going to read you out the statement Marcella gave to the court, okay? Before I get to the convictions and the end of this case, let me tell you what she said. Devontae Williams was my son. At the time of Devontae's death, we lived in Arlington, Texas, with Devontae, Destiny, Alicia, Lisa, and Dontrell Coleman. We all lived at the apartment for 7 to 8 months. I found Devontae dead on the morning of July 26, 2004. When I found him, he was still warm, and I thought that he had just died. Devontae was in his bed alone when I found him dead. Devontae, Destiny, Alicia, Lisa, and I were all together in the same room, but Devontae was sleeping alone in his bed. Devontae was not restrained or tied up in any way whatsoever while he was sleeping. He went to bed at 7 p.m. the night before. When he went to bed that night, he was not restrained. However, he was very sick the day before. He was throwing up and was in and out of the bathroom during the day. On July 25, 2004, Devontae was restrained for about 10 minutes because he was getting into stuff while we were getting ready. Now, before I continue reading the letter, what the hell is that? You know, sometimes when I get ready, my son, he's running around, jumping on the bed, jumping on like the couch, doing all sorts of crazy stuff. You know what I don't do? I don't get some clothes, pour it on his hands, and tie him to the radiator or something like that. What the hell is this? You know what I mean? She goes on to say that sometime during the day, on July 25, 2004, all of us, including Devontae, went to Lisa's mother's apartment, about 2 buildings down from us, for about half an hour. When we were there, Devontae was playing with other children. We kept Devontae restrained from time to time. She went on to say that Devontae was never restrained for more than half a day. Most of the time, Devontae was restrained while we were asleep to keep him from getting into stuff that would hurt him. You know what a normal restraint is? The gates. You know, child gates for like the stairs or whatever? That's a restraint, you muppet. Not tying him up. She also said, we always let Devontae loose after we restrained him, and we never restrained him for more than half a day. When he was restrained, it was because that was the only way I know how to keep him out of stuff. Any restraint was done with my permission or at my direction. That was a statement from Marcella. That's a full admission of torture. In fact, one of the interviews that Marcella had with the CPS, it was revealed that she and Lisa always had fights over Lisa abusing Devontae. When asked about what happened to Devontae's lip, Marcella said that Lisa accidentally popped it. When asked about the marks on Devontae's wrists, Marcella said that they were from electric cord being too tight. Okay, so to conclude on this case, Lisa was sentenced to death. Now, I want to read out an article to you from the September the 17th, 2014. Right? So she's sentenced to death. Listen to this article. A Texas woman convicted of the starvation and torture death of her girlfriend's 9-year-old son a decade ago was executed on Wednesday evening. So yes, Lisa was sentenced to death and then she was executed. Let me keep on reading this article to you. Lisa, who was 38 at the time, received a lethal injection about an hour after the US Supreme Court rejected a last-day appeal to spare her. She was pronounced dead at 6:24 p.m., 12 minutes after Texas Department of Criminal officials began administering a lethal dose, pentobarbital. Lisa smiled and nodded to several friends and an aunt who watched through a window, thanking them and expressing her love. She also said she loved the other women on Texas death row and urged them to keep their heads up. "I'm all right," she said. "Tell them I finished strong. God is good." She mouthed an audible kiss, laughed and nodded to her witnesses in the seconds before the lethal drugs took place. "Love you all," she said. Then there was no further movement. As for Marcella, she took a plea deal and was sentenced to life in prison. In fact, in 2014, Marcella's aunt, Tracy Williams, said that the family felt that Marcella should receive the death penalty. She said that the family blamed both women for Devontae's death and that Marcella had a responsibility to protect Devontae from him. Finally, Devontae's sisters were placed in foster care after his death. Lips. Bruises on the lips, cigarette burns, malnutrition, growth stunt, so to speak. How, as a society, do we just let this happen? How do adults treat a child like this? I think you can agree. Well, there's just no words. So, thank you for watching.